I never alleged that there was any conspiracy. What I suggested was that there were warnings that came into this administration.
Now is the time for our elected officials to be held accountable. Now is the time for the media to be held accountable. Why aren't the hard questions being asked? We know there were numerous warnings of the events to come on September 11. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, delivered one such warning. Those engaged in unusual stock trades immediately before September 11 knew enough to make millions of dollars from United and American Airlines, certain insurance and brokerage firm stocks. What did this administration know, and when did it know it? Who else knew, and why did they not warn the innocent people of New York who were needlessly murdered?
Her words were taken, put through a media mixmaster, and changed around.
Here you have Cynthia McKinney accusing essentially the president of being an accessory to mass murder and doing it for profit.
They bolted together two statements from different parts of a long interview and said, McKinney said, didn't have McKinney on to respond.
We had President Bush place a phone call to Majority Leader Senator Tom Daschle asking him not to investigate the events of September 11th. And then, hot on the heels of the president's phone call was another phone call from the vice president asking that Tom Daschle also not investigate the events that led to September 11th. My question is, what do they have to hide?
The job was quite complete. Cynthia McKinney was accused of saying that George Bush knew all about the September 11th attack in advance, and that he kept it to himself to make sure that his buddies would profit from the wars to come.
I'm an African-American single mom from the state of Georgia. You know, I'm not supposed to question my country. I'm not supposed to question the behavior of my leaders, I suppose.
I mean, I don't care who was president or what it was not the time to do any of that, and that absolutely nailed my respect, killed any respect I ever had for her.
It was a frustrating time for everybody. Somebody's looking for somebody to hate. We've still not caught Osama bin Laden. We couldn't take out that huge tragedy on anybody, so we started taking it out on Muslims, and then we started taking it out on Cynthia McKinney.
I'm asking you to question why my opponent has continued to vote against appropriations for military and intelligence support. If you want to continue to have the liberties that you have, you are going to have to make a sacrifice, just like my parents sacrificed, your parents sacrificed, and if you don't think it's worth it, then you need to move somewhere. And I'm not surprised at all at anything Denise Majek says. Remember, she's against the minimum wage, she's against affirmative action, she's against reparations.
She's always been viewed, especially by her Republican or white constituents, as being in opposition to them. Her focus seemed to be only on her core group of voters, which is basically black voters in South DeKalb.
I think she manipulates, the black voters and plays a race card to get herself elected. Makes her, in my opinion, one of the dirtiest politicians there is.
I guess the Republican mindset had grasped onto Cynthia McKinney's 9/11 comments and used that to somehow say that she was un-American, that she was a threat to America. That spilled over into the media. A writer on the AJC had written a story about her contributor list, saying that she was taking money from terrorists.
The story that I did was She had her second best day in 5 years of political fundraising on September 11th. That's what the campaign disclosure said. The names on those lists are several Muslim people. You know, I would be remiss to say I'd be worth much of a journalism if I didn't investigate that.
On 9/11, while the rest of the world watched in horror at the tragedy that was occurring across our country, you were counting money received from some people who have been named as Arab terrorists. How do you explain that?
We don't racially profile our contributors. All of our campaign contributions are legal. Now, my opponent, on the other hand, has an awful lot of Republican money going into her coffers.
I can't really complain about the way they handled the coverage because obviously I was delighted every time they slammed Cynthia McKinney. Were I a scholar looking at it, yeah, I might tend to be a little bit more critical.
The Republicans were after McKinney because she's a progressive, African-American Democrat and was a very vocal critic of George Bush. The brains behind this was Mark Davis, a known Republican operative to who this day brags about this. See, they don't deny it.
This is a South Georgia wild boar, weighed about 200 pounds, from our hunting club on the Okmulgee River. It was some of the best politics I've ever participated in. I've been doing this for about 20 years. Our company does voter database work. We were involved in the redistricting effort for the Republican Party. We built a voter database that we used to map out all the new districts. It was drawn deliberately by the legislature to be a Democrat seat. And if we can't put a Republican in it, then the next best thing is to put in a moderate. I recalled the way that Republicans used to exert political influence when we were an extreme minority, and that was through crossover voting.
The primaries are basically for the parties to pick their own candidates who will run in the general election. One party cannot hijack the other party's primary.
Georgia's an open primary state. There's nothing illegal or even immoral about choosing to participate in one party's primary or another.
You have a choice when you go in of either taking a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot.
I pulled numbers for her district trying to see if there was any way we could beat her.
They knew a Republican could not beat McKinney, so they concocted the scheme to have their candidate, Denise Majette, run in the Democratic Party, hoping that she would get some Democrat votes, but knowing that it would get all the Republicans to cross over.
What we were basically talking about was asking Republican voters to leave our primary and vote in the Democrat primary for a black female Democrat. It's a tall order.
It was very hurtful and painful to see an African-American female agreeing to be a part of that conspiracy.
Well, it's just another way to deny black people the vote. You figure out a way to trump their vote, and that's what they figured.
Black people were lynched in America years ago as examples so that no uppity black person or progressive white person would make a mistake. They lynched union people too. So one of the latest lynching, now done electronically, was of Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney.
All it took really was communicating to the community that yes, this was an organized effort, and that if they would cross over and vote against Cynthia, they'd be joined by thousands of other people.
I had received a mail out for this group, goodbyecynthia.com, and they were using the slogans, anybody but Cynthia, because I'm a white married male living in North DeKalb County, and they assumed I didn't like her either.
It shows her being erased, and when you open it, she's almost gone, and there's just a pile of eraser crumbs. The emails that we sent out were humorous. People forwarded those emails all over town, and it helped drive traffic to our site. They said every time they called somebody to ask them to cross over and vote against Cynthia McKinney, it almost seemed like people came through the phone at them saying, oh, I want to help, how can I help?
It's like going back to the all-white primary. There you have basically the same thing. The white Republicans are taken away from the black Democrats, the candidate of their choice. They're moving into their primary saying, we're not going to let you elect your candidate. We're going to dictate who your candidate is.
We have some very difficult days ahead. Don't sit here in DeKalb County and not think